Hello and welcome to the next reading of Ghosts of Christmas Past. This is the 8th story in the book, but this is the 7th one I've done, having not read The Shadow by E. Nesbit. Now tonight's is called The Vanishing House by Bernard Capes. Now, The Vanishing House by the forgotten Victorian writer Bernard Capes. A bunch of travelling musicians encounter a winter horror in a brief dialect story that starts out as broad and boozy comedy and ends up feeling like a lost fragment of folk tale. So, The Vanishing House, which is roughly only 7 pages long. The Vanishing House by Bernard Capes. My grandfather, said the banjo, drank dog's nose. My father drank dog's nose. And I drink dog's nose. If that ain't heredity, there's no virtue in the board schools. Ah, said the piccolo, you're always a boasting of your science, and so I suppose your son'll drink dog's nose too. No, retorted the banjo with a rumbling laugh, like wind in the bunghole of an empty cask, for I ain't got none. The family ends with me, which is a pity, for I'm a full stop to be proud on. He was an enormous tun-bellied person, a mere mound of expressionless flesh, whose size alone was an investment that paid a perpetual dividend of laughter. When, as with the rest of his company, his face was blackened, it looked like a specimen coal on a pedestal in a museum. There was Christmas company in the good intent, and the sanded tap room, with its trestle tables and sprigs of holly, stuck under sooty beams, reeked with smoke and the steam of hot gin and water. How much could you put down of a night, Jack? Said a little grinning man by the door. Why, said the banjo, enough to lay the dustiest ghost as ever walked. Could you now? Said the little man. Ah, said the banjo, chuckling, there's nothing like setting one spent to lay another, and there I could give you proof number 2 of heredity. Heredity. What? Don't you go for to say you ever seed a ghost? Haven't I? What are you whispering about, you blushful chap there by the window? I was only remarking, sir, 'twere snoring like the devil. Is it? Then the devil has been misjudged these 1890-odd years. But did you ever see a ghost? Said the little grinning man, pursuing his subject. No, I didn't, sir, mimicked the banjo, saving in coffee grounds. But my grandfather, in his cups, seed one, which brings us to number 3 in the matter of heredity. Give us the story, Jack, said the bones, whose aged chins were extemporizing a rattle on their own account before the fire. Well, I don't mind, said the fat man. It's seasonable and unseasonable like the blessed plum pudding. I am, and the more burnt brandy you set about me, the richer and headier I'll go down. You'd be a jolly old pudding to digest, said the piccolo. You blow your aggrawation into your pipe and seal in wax the stops, said his friend. He drew critically at his churchwarden a moment or so, leaned forward, emptied his glass into his capacious receptacles, and, giving his stomach a shift, as if to accommodate it to its new burden, proceeded as follows. Music and malt is my natural inheritance. My grandfather blew his dog's nose and drank his clarinet like an artist. And my father, what did you say your grandfather did? Asked the piccolo. He played the clarinet. You said he blew his dog's nose. Don't be an ass, Fred, said the banjo, aggrieved. How the blazes could a man blow his dog's nose unless he muzzled it with a handkerchief and then twisted its tail? He played the clarinet, I say, and my father played the musical glasses, which was a form of harmony particularly genial to him. Amongst us we've piped out a good long century. Ah, we have, for all I look sich a babby bursting on sops and spoon meat. What? Said the little man by the door. You don't include them cocked hats in your experience? My grandfather wore 'em, sir. He wore a play-acting coat, too, and buckles to his shoes, when he'd got any. And he and a friend or two made a permanency of weights, only they called 'em according to the season, and got their profit going from house to house, principally in the country, and discoursing music at the low rate of whatever they could get for it. Ain't you coming to the ghost, Jack? Said the little man hungrily. All in course, sir. Well, gentlemen, it was hard times pretty often with my grandfather and his friends, as you may suppose, and never so much as when they had to trudge it across country with the nor'easter buzzing in their teeth and the snow piled on their cocked hats like lemon sponge on entry dishes. The rewards, I've heard him say, for he lived to be 90 nevertheless, was poor compensation for the drifts and the influenza and the broken chilblains. But now and again they'd get a fair skinful of liquor from a jolly squire, as had set 'em up like boggarts mended with new broomsticks. Haw, haw, broke in a hurdle maker in a corner, and then, regretting the publicity of his merriment, put his fingers bashfully to his stubble lips. Now, said the banjo, it's of a particular night and a particular skinful that I'm a-going to tell you, and that night fell dark, and that skinful were took 100 years ago this December as Jack pudding. He paused a moment for effect before he went on. They were down in the south-west country, which they little knew, and were a nigh Winchester city, or should have been, but they got muzzed on the ungodly downs, and before they guessed they was off the track. My good hat, there they was, as lost in the snow as 3 nutshells a sinking into a hasty pudding. Well, they wandered round, pretty confident at first, but getting madder and madder as every sense of their bearings slipped from them, and the bitter cold took their vitals, so as they saw nothing but a great winding sheet stretched abroad for to wrap their dead carcasses in. At last my grandfather, he stopped and pulled himself together with an awful face, and says he, we're Christmas pie for the carrying on crows if we don't prove ourselves human. Let's fetch out our pipes and blow our trouble into 'em. So they stood together like as if they was before a house, and they played Kate of Aberdare, mighty dismal and flat, for their fingers froze to the keys. Now, I tell you, they hadn't climbed over the first stave when there come a skin o' wind and spindrift o' snow as almost took them off of their feet, and on the going down of it, Jem Sloke, as played the hawk boy, dropped the reed from his mouth and called out, sakes alive, if we fools ain't been standing outside a gentleman's gate all the time and not knowing it. You might have knocked the 3 of 'em down wi' a barley straw, as they stared and then fell into a low enjoying laugh, for they was standing not 6 foot from a tall iron gate in a stone wall, and behind these was a great house showing out dim with the windows all lighted up. Lord, chuckled my grandfather, To think of the tricks of this vaganious country. But as we're here, we'll go on and give 'em a taste of our quality. They put new heart into the next movement, as you may guess, and they hadn't fair started on it when the door of the house swung open, and down the shaft of light that shot out as far as the gate, there come a smiling young gal with a tray of glasses in her hands. Now she come to the bars, and she took and put a glass through, not saying nothing, but inviting someone to drink with a silent laugh. Did anyone take that glass? Of course he did, you'll be thinking, and you'll be thinking wrong. Not a man of the three moved. They was struck like a stone, and their lips was gone the colour of slowberries. Not a man took the glass. For why? The moment the gal presented it, each saw the face of a thing looking out of the window over the porch, and the face was hideous beyond words, and the shadow of it, with the light behind, stretched out and reached to the gal and made her hideous too. At last my grandfather gave a groan and put out his hand, and as he did it the face went, and the gal was beautiful to see again. "Death and the devil," said he. "It's one or both, either way, and I prefer 'em hot to cold." He drank off half the glass, smacked his lips, and stood staring a moment. "Dear, dear," said the gal in a voice like falling water, "you've drunk blood, sir." My grandfather gave a yell, slapped the rest of the liquor in the faces of his friends, and threw the cup again the bars. It broke with a noise like thunder, and at that he upped with his hands and fell full length into the snow. There was a pause. The little man by the door was twisting nervously in his chair. "He came to, of course. He came to," said he at length. "He come to," said the banjo solemnly, "in the bitter break of dawn. That is, he come to as much of hisself as he ever was after. He give a squiggle and lifted his head, and there was he and his friends a-lying on the snow of the high downs. And the house and the gal? Nary a sign of either, sir, but just the sky and the white stretch and one other thing. And what was that? A stain of red sunk in where the cup had spilt." There was a second pause, and the banjo blew into the bowl of his pipe. "They cleared out of that neighbourhood double quick, you'll bet," said he. But my grandfather was never the same again. His face took purple, while his friends only remained splashed with red, same as birthmarks. And I tell you, if he ever ventured upon Kate of Aberdare, his cheeks swelled up to the reed of his clarinet, like as a blue plum on a stalk. And 40 year after, he died of what they call solution of blood to the brain. "And you can't have better proof than that," said the little man. "That's what I say," said the banjo. "Next player, gentlemen, please."